My dears, have you ever done something completely unexpected? Something no one understood at the time, but that made perfect sense in your heart? If you'd like, share your answer in the comments. Because today I'm going to tell you the story of a wealthy woman, scarred by pain and humiliation, who made a decision that shocked everyone. She showed up at her ex-husband's wedding with a homeless man as her fiancé. But the reason behind that choice? Oh, that will warm your heart and make you reflect on pride, gratitude, and new beginnings. Subscribe to our channel, and let's dive into another emotional story together.
Ashley Carter gazed out the window of her luxurious downtown Chicago apartment, the city's skyline shimmering in the twilight. Her 9-year-old daughter, Ethan, slept soundly on the living room sofa, curled beneath a red blanket. She sighed, adjusting the silver bow tie she wore for that day's business meeting. The clock showed 7:30 p.m., and she still had an hour of work before she could pick up her child. The cell phone vibrated on the table, signaling another message from Mark, her ex-husband. She ignored the call, as she had been doing since he had abandoned her 2 years prior, along with Chloe, the girlfriend he had sworn did not exist. Ashley closed her eyes for a moment, attempting to banish the painful memories. She turned back to the computer and opened the presentation file she was about to deliver. Her company, a high-end fashion brand she had built from the ground up, was at a pivotal moment of expansion. She needed to impress the investors, among them Lucas Mitchell, a successful businessman who would also be attending Mark and Chloe's wedding, an event scheduled for the end of the week. The following morning, Ashley was running late. Chicago's chaotic traffic caused her to arrive at the office 10 minutes behind schedule. Ethan, who usually waited eagerly in the building's playroom, was nowhere to be found. Her heart leaped into her throat upon hearing the sounds of shouting and honking outside the window. She rushed to the balcony and saw her young son darting towards the street, narrowly avoiding being struck by a taxi. Without a second thought, she leapt from the building, descended the stairs in a flash, and snatched Ethan up before he could be crushed. The impact sent Ashley sprawling to the ground, Ethan sobbing in her arms. She looked up to see a tall man, clad in grimy clothes with a mane of long hair, assisting them. His green eyes held a depth that suggested he'd witnessed more than his years would imply. Without a word, he helped Ashley to her feet and cradled Ethan firmly, as if the child were the most precious thing in existence. "Thank you," Ashley whispered, panting. "You saved my son." "It's what any father would do," he replied, a bitter smile on his face. "Your son. Is he your son?" Ashley nodded, her gaze fixed on Ethan, who was now crying on her shoulder. "He's all I have." The man, who identified himself as Jack Walker, stepped away, but she noticed he glanced at the baby with a mixture of sadness and resolve. "Do you want me to stay?" he asked, his voice wavering. "I can help take him home." Ashley agreed, still unable to fully process what had transpired. As they ambled through the bustling streets of Chicago, she observed Jack maintaining a constant hand on Ethan's shoulder, as if he were loath to ever release him. Upon arriving at the apartment, she attempted to offer him money, but he declined. Instead, he requested an opportunity for employment. "I can be your bodyguard," he stated, with an unyielding resolve she couldn't dismiss. "I know how to protect those who matter." Ashley hesitated, but there was something about Jack that inspired confidence. He had a way of looking at Ethan that she had never seen in anyone else. "Let's see how you do," she said, offering a weary smile. "You're starting today." 2 months later, Jack had become a fixture in Ashley and Ethan's lives. He was loyal, responsible, and, against all odds, possessed infinite patience with the child. Ethan, who had previously been reserved and insecure, had begun to smile more, to play without fear. Ashley noticed that, gradually, Jack was changing. He cut his hair, bought clean clothes, and with his first paycheck, he rented a room in a small boarding house near his work. She watched him transform, as if the responsibility of protecting his family was healing him of something he carried within. But not everything was smooth sailing. His colleagues, particularly Robert, the security chief Ashley had dismissed to hire Jack, made no secret of their displeasure. "He's just another loose cannon you've brought into our company, Ash," Robert had remarked, a sardonic grin playing on his lips. "You'll both regret this." Ashley disregarded the comments, trusting her intuition. She felt Jack possessed something special, something he himself had yet to grasp. And, to her surprise, Ethan seemed to share a unique connection with the man who had saved his life. "Mom, that Uncle Jack is my hero," he had said once, smiling. When the wedding invitation for Mark and Chloe arrived, Ashley hesitated. She didn't want to revisit those painful feelings, but she knew she had to attend. The wedding would be an important event for her company, and she wouldn't let her former friend and ex-husband get the better of her. She decided to bring Jack along, pretending he was her new boyfriend. "Let's show them I'm doing well," she said, smiling at Ethan, who loved the idea. As they got ready for the party, Ashley noticed Jack was nervous, yet resolute. He was wearing a suit Ashley had given him as a gift, and his hair was neatly trimmed. "You look wonderful," she said genuinely. "Let's knock him dead." At the wedding venue, a luxurious downtown Chicago hotel, Ashley and Jack were met with envious glances. Mark, who had always detested Jack, appeared particularly incensed. Ashley observed that he was drinking more than usual and that Chloe, his new wife, was smirking maliciously. She squeezed Jack's hand, feeling him tremble slightly. "It's all right," she whispered. "Let's enjoy the evening." During the party, Ashley took the opportunity to speak with Lucas Mitchell, who expressed interest in her new expansion project. She was on the verge of finalizing a deal that would alter the trajectory of her company when the unexpected occurred. Robert, who had worked for her years prior, showed up and began circulating rumors about Jack. "Did you know he's a former veteran with health issues?" he bellowed, loud enough for many to overhear. "And I heard he's been incarcerated before." Ashley observed Jack flush, visibly mortified. He glanced at her, and she saw the pain in his eyes. "I'm just a man who wants to protect those he loves," he whispered, before turning away, unwilling to meet Mark's gaze as he chuckled at the predicament. Ashley wanted to go after him, but she knew she had to maintain her composure. She closed her eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath. When she opened them, she saw that Jack had vanished. Her hand trembled, and she felt a weight in her heart she couldn't explain. Ashley Carter glanced at the clock on the ballroom wall. It was 8:30 p.m., and Mark and Chloe's wedding ceremony had concluded more than an hour ago. Soft music played in the background, and guests were dancing with gusto. She held a champagne flute in her hand, but her gaze was fixed on Jack's figure, who stood by the balcony, gazing at the full moon illuminating Chicago. The wedding invitation had presented a difficult decision for Ashley. She still recalled the promises Mark had made during their engagement, the vows of eternal love that were never fulfilled. However, the prospect of getting closer to Lucas Mitchell, one of the most prominent investors in the fashion industry, had been irresistible. And bringing Jack along, pretending they were a couple, seemed the most effective way to maintain her composure in front of her former partners. Jack, on the other hand, was not feeling entirely at ease. He moved around the room with a mixture of pride and self-consciousness, fielding the guests' curious questions. He noticed many regarding him with suspicion, particularly after hearing whispers about his past. He recalled nights on the streets, the feeling of powerlessness he experienced while navigating the thoroughfares of Chicago, begging and striving simply to survive. Now, however, he possessed a family, a fresh start, and this fueled his resolve to safeguard all that he had achieved. Ashley noticed Jack had drifted slightly away, observing the crowd with a serious expression. She offered him a smile, attempting to convey reassurance. She knew he was grappling with something, though she wasn't entirely certain what it was. She moved closer, resolved to find out. "You seem to have something on your mind," she said softly, in Portuguese, so no one else would hear. Jack gazed at her, his green eyes mirroring the intricacy of his thoughts. I'm just trying to process all of this," he stated, gesturing to the room teeming with people laughing and conversing. "It's a lot to take in, you know?" Ashley nodded, grasping his meaning. You don't have to go through this alone, you know? I'm here. Jack smiled, but there was something in his eyes she couldn't quite decipher. He glanced at the champagne flute in his hands and shook his head. I know, and I appreciate it. You and Ethan have helped me more than you realize. Ashley hesitated, sensing there was something Jack was trying to articulate, but wasn't quite prepared to divulge. She opted to steer the conversation elsewhere, recognizing that the opportune moment for more profound exchanges would present itself later. Shall we dance? She proposed, taking his hand. Jack appeared to hesitate for a moment, but then he smiled and accepted. They joined other guests on the dance floor, where the mellow music enveloped them in its rhythm. Ashley noticed that Jack moved with a grace she hadn't previously observed, as if dancing were something he had done countless times before. As they danced, Ashley looked at Jack's face and saw something that took her by surprise. An expression of peace, something he rarely displayed. She wondered what might be going on in his head, what had led him to such a moment of tranquility. She knew Jack's past was painful, but she was also beginning to realize that he was starting to break free from it, little by little. Late into the night, Ashley and Jack sat in the hotel garden, gazing at the city lights reflecting on the Chicago River. The moon hung low in the sky, and the air was crisp, but they paid it no mind. They had spent the evening dancing, talking, and getting to know each other even better. You know, Jack said softly, breaking the silence, I never thought I'd be capable of feeling something like this again. Something worth protecting. Ashley gazed at him, her heart warming at his words. I never thought you were capable of so much either, she said, smiling. You're an incredible person, Jack, and I'm so proud of you. Jack smiled, but there was something in his gaze that indicated he was still wrestling with something. He looked at the river, at the gently moving waves, and said, There's something I need to tell you, something I've been keeping bottled up for a long time. Ashley perceived the conflict in his eyes and knew this was a conversation that could not be deferred. She leaned forward, determined to hear him out, to give him the opportunity to be honest, to be truthful, even if it meant she would have to contend with repercussions she was unready to face. Jack took a deep breath, his gaze fixed on the horizon, and began to recount his story, a narrative he had never before divulged to another soul. He spoke of his past, of the choices that had propelled him onto the streets, of the inner demons he still wrestled to keep in check. He spoke of the pain, the shame, and the guilt that had been his constant companions since childhood. Ashley listened in silence, her hand clasped with Jack's as he poured out his heart. She saw the strong, resolute man he appeared to be, but also the fragile, vulnerable man he concealed behind his ramparts. She wondered how someone who seemed so formidable could be shouldering such a burden, and she vowed to do everything within her power to help him unburden himself. After Jack finished speaking, Ashley remained silent for a few minutes, absorbing everything she had heard. She knew her words couldn't undo Jack's past, but she also knew he deserved more than the burden of his own choices. She leaned forward and embraced him, feeling him tremble slightly in her arms. You are not alone in this, she said, her voice steady but warm. I'm here for you. Ethan's here for you. We're going to help you build a brighter future. Jack nodded, his expression sincere and grateful. He knew Ashley was a woman of her word, that she wouldn't shy away from hardship. He felt a peace he hadn't experienced in a long time, as if he were finally finding his place in the world. As they made their way back to Ashley's apartment, Jack couldn't help but notice how the world around him seemed altered. The city lights, the clamor of the streets, everything possessed a novel significance, as if he were beholding it all for the very first time. He understood that the path ahead would not be without its challenges. Yet he also knew that he was not traversing it alone. He now possessed a family, a concept he could never have envisioned attaining. In the apartment, Ethan was already asleep, deeply so, his small body relaxed on the sofa. Ashley prepared a cup of hot tea for Jack, knowing he would need something to help him unwind. They sat in the kitchen, in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Jack broke the silence first. I have to thank you, he said, his voice low and sincere. You've given me a second chance, something I never thought I'd get. I don't know how to thank you enough. Ashley smiled, shaking her head. You don't need to thank me, Jack. What you did for me and Ethan, that's what matters. Jack looked at her, his eyes alight with emotion. I just wanted you to know how lucky you are, he said. You're an incredible person, Ashley, and I'm so grateful you came into my life. Ashley smiled, knowing that this moment would herald the beginning of a new chapter in their lives. She understood that the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, but she also knew that she and Jack were prepared to confront them together. She glanced at her son, sleeping innocently in the next room, and realized that it was all worthwhile. As the hours wore on, Ashley observed Jack becoming increasingly at ease in her apartment, as if he were finally finding his footing. He helped with the dishes, tidied the kitchen, and eventually settled onto the sofa beside Ethan, smiling at the boy who had begun to drift off to sleep. Ashley felt a sense of peace, a feeling she hadn't experienced in a very long time. She knew that life still held many surprises for them, some pleasant, others not, but she felt prepared to face them, knowing she had a man like Jack in her life, someone who would always stand by her side, safeguarding those she cherished. As she lay in bed, Ashley gazed at Jack, who was sitting on the kitchen floor, sketching with Ethan. A smile played on her lips, knowing this moment signified the dawn of something new, something she had never dared to imagine for herself. Deep in her heart, she understood that she and Jack were merely at the cusp of a journey that would irrevocably alter the course of their lives. Ashley Carter watched Jack, who moved with an unexpected grace on the dance floor. The soft music enveloped them in its rhythm, and for a moment, she allowed herself to savor that moment of peace. He seemed different, more self-assured, as if the dance liberated him from something that had weighed on his spirit. She noticed him looking at Ethan with a love that transcended mere friendship. There was something more there, something Ashley was beginning to grasp, though it remained somewhat elusive. The evening wore on, and with it, the burgeoning realization that something more substantial was coalescing between Ashley and Jack. She pondered whether this sentiment was merely a product of gratitude or if something more profound lay concealed beneath the surface. Meanwhile, Ethan, blissfully unaware, engaged with one of the guests, chuckling at the jests that only a child can truly appreciate. He was radiant, a sight Ashley hadn't witnessed in weeks. She attributed this to Jack's presence, who possessed a singular knack for winning over hearts. However, the celebration was not solely marked by moments of merriment. The arrival of Robert, Ashley's former colleague, injected a palpable tension into the atmosphere. He circulated the room with his characteristic smirk, sowing seeds of doubt about Jack. "Do you two genuinely believe this is going to work out?" he inquired, his tone laced with the usual condescension, gesturing towards Jack with his chin. "Your security detail? Seriously?" Ashley felt her blood boil, but she tried to maintain her composure. She knew Robert was merely projecting his frustrations onto Jack, someone who had nothing to do with his dismissal. She approached Jack, who seemed to be making a concerted effort to disregard the remarks. "Let's dance," she suggested, gripping his hand firmly. "None of this is going to bring us down." Jack gazed at her, his green eyes alight with an emotion Ashley couldn't quite decipher. He accepted, and together, they joined the dance floor, where the music enveloped them in its rhythm. As they moved, Ashley observed that Jack danced with a fluidity she'd never witnessed in anyone, as if it were an innate part of him, practiced countless times. He was at ease, a smile gracing his lips, a quality she was beginning to find truly captivating. Late into the night, as they made their way back to the apartment, Ashley allowed herself to reflect on everything that had transpired. She recognized that Jack was undergoing a transformation, that he was discovering something that was helping him surmount his past. She wondered whether this metamorphosis was attributable to the affection he harbored for Ethan, or if there was something more profound at play. She resolved that she needed to speak with Jack about it, that she needed to gain a clearer understanding of what was happening with him. Upon arriving at the apartment, Ethan was already fast asleep, deeply so, his small, tranquil form resting on the sofa. Ashley prepared a warm cup of tea for Jack, knowing he would need something to help him unwind. They sat in the kitchen, enveloped in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Jack broke the silence first. "I have to thank you," he said, his voice low and sincere. "You've given me a second chance, something I never thought I'd get. I don't know how to thank you enough for that." Ashley smiled, shaking her head. "You don't need to thank me, Jack. What you did for me and Ethan, that's what matters." Jack gazed at her, his eyes alight with emotion. "I just wanted you to know how lucky you are," he said. "You're an incredible person, Ashley, and I'm so grateful you came into my life." Ashley smiled, knowing that this moment would herald the commencement of a new chapter in their lives. She understood that the path ahead would not be without its challenges, but she also knew that she and Jack were prepared to confront it together. She glanced towards her son, sleeping innocently in the adjoining room, and realized that it was all worthwhile. As the hours wore on, Ashley observed that Jack was becoming increasingly comfortable in her apartment, as though he were finally finding his footing. He helped with the dishes, tidied the kitchen, and eventually settled onto the sofa beside Ethan, smiling at the boy who had begun to drift off to sleep. Ashley felt at peace, a state she hadn't experienced in a considerable time. She understood that life still held numerous unforeseen events for them, some auspicious and others less so, but she was prepared to confront them, secure in the knowledge that she had a man like Jack in her life, someone who would invariably stand by her side, safeguarding those dear to her. As she lay in bed, Ashley gazed at Jack, who was sitting on the kitchen floor, drawing with Ethan. A smile touched her lips, a quiet acknowledgement that this moment heralded the dawn of something new, something she'd never dared to envision for herself. Deep within her heart, she knew that she and Jack were merely at the nascent stage of an odyssey that would irrevocably alter the course of their lives. Ashley Carter gazed at Jack's face, peacefully slumbering in the hospital. The gentle moonlight streamed through the window, softly illuminating the room. She felt a maelstrom of emotions as she held his hand, caressing it tenderly. She still couldn't quite fathom that Jack had awakened from his coma, a miracle the physicians had deemed improbable. Meanwhile, Ethan, seated beside her, clutched Jack's hand tightly, a guileless smile gracing his lips, as if that connection were the most natural thing in existence. Lucas Mitchell, Jack's biological father, had pledged his support, proffering a life of opulence and opportunities that Jack could scarcely have fathomed. Nevertheless, Jack had steadfastly declined the offer, choosing instead to forge his life alongside Ashley and Ethan. This decision had not been easily arrived at for him, and Ashley could discern that he was grappling internally with the past he sought to leave behind and the future he was beginning to construct. As Jack recovered, Ashley began to realize their relationship was shifting. A deeper connection had formed between them, something that transcended the obligation to protect Ethan. She observed Jack's earnest efforts to be the best father he could be for the boy, a stark contrast to Mark, whom she despised for never having done the same. Jack's resolve to surpass his biological father was admirable, and Ashley felt a swell of pride at witnessing this transformation. Mark, on the other hand, grew increasingly desperate. His envy of Jack and Ashley consumed him, and he did not hesitate to threaten Jack, attempting to intimidate him into abandoning his new life. However, Jack was resolute in protecting his family, and Ashley stood by him, demonstrating that love and loyalty could surmount even the most formidable obstacles. As the days unfolded, Jack began to integrate more fully into Ashley and Ethan's lives. He assisted with Ethan's care, participated in family activities, and exhibited a patience that many adults would envy. This transformation was evident to everyone who knew him, and many started to perceive him as a different man, someone deserving of a second chance. Lucas, respecting Jack's decision, offered him a position in the family business, something that could ensure a stable future for him. However, Jack preferred to continue working as a security guard, feeling that it kept him connected to the family he had built. He knew his journey was far from over, and that there was still much to learn and grow. Ashley, in turn, began to reflect on her own life and the choices she had made. She wondered if she had made the right decision in abandoning her career to dedicate herself to raising Ethan. But now that she had Jack in her life, she felt she had found a balance she could never have imagined. She knew she was not alone, and that together, they could face anything. Meanwhile, Ethan was radiant, his little heart brimming with love and confidence. He didn't fully grasp what was transpiring, but he knew he had a father who adored him and a mother who safeguarded him. He was the very reason Jack and Ashley were fighting, and that was all that mattered. Ultimately, Ashley realized that she and Jack were merely at the nascent stages of a protracted and arduous journey. She eagerly anticipated witnessing the evolution of her family, and she possessed unwavering faith that all would unfold according to their meticulously laid plans. As she clasped Jack's hand, she felt a profound certainty that she and Ethan were in capable hands, and that, united, they could forge a future replete with love and optimism. In light of the revelations Ashley, Jack, and Ethan have confronted, a narrative of resilience, forgiveness, and love emerges, transcending the barriers of the past. Each decision, each conflict, each moment of vulnerability and strength seems to have been woven with a precision that no longer permits hesitation. The path Jack has forged, from his journey on the streets to his transformation into the devoted guardian of a family he never imagined possessing, is a living testament to how the scars of time can become hallmarks of recognition, not pain. Meanwhile, Ashley, forging her own legacy of courage and determination, has found in Jack not merely a partner, but proof that love can transcend even the deepest wounds. In the hush of night, as Ashley gazes upon the sleeping Jack and the innocently dreaming Ethan, she realizes that love is not merely a force that shields, but also a balm that mends. It is akin to an unseen undercurrent, capable of moving mountains and transforming lives. In this profound instant, she comprehends that the legacy being woven extends beyond the three of them, encompassing all who seek a second chance, a family, or a haven that can cradle their hurts and magnify their triumphs. As dawn approaches, carrying with it the promise of a new day, the echoing question is, what defines our family? Is it the blood that runs through our veins, or is it the love we have built with our own hands? The answer, as we see through the journey of Ashley, Jack, and Ethan, is clear. Family is where the heart finds its home, and love is the force that holds it together, even through the darkest of days. The dawn light painted the Chicago sky in hues of rose as Ashley, Jack, and Ethan converged on the apartment balcony, witnessing the city's gradual awakening. The crisp morning air carried the promise of a new day, brimming with potential. Ethan, with his characteristic guilelessness, tugged on Jack's hand and whispered, "Today is our day, Daddy." Jack offered a smile that mirrored the profound peace he now harbored within. He met Ashley's gaze, and she returned his look with a resolve that transcended the immediate moment. They understood that the path ahead would not be without its challenges, but they also knew with unwavering certainty that they were equipped to navigate it together. Jack's journey, from a wounded and despondent man to a devoted father and protector, served as a living testament to the power of love and grace. He had discovered something that enabled him to transcend the demons of his past, something that allowed him to envision a future he had never dared to imagine. And he was not alone on this path. Ashley, with her resilience and resolve, was his partner, and Ethan, with his innocence and purity, was the beacon guiding him forward. Together, they had forged something greater than themselves, something that surpassed wealth, status, or achievement. They had built a family, founded on love, loyalty, and respect. As the sun ascended, bathing the streets of Chicago in light, Ashley experienced a profound sense of peace she hadn't felt in ages. She acknowledged that life would undoubtedly present further hurdles, yet she also recognized that she and Jack were fully prepared to confront them. Gazing at Jack's face, now etched with a serenity he would never relinquish, she understood that she had finally discovered the home she had perpetually sought. Ashley, Jack, and Ethan's story was not merely the chronicle of a family. It was the narrative of how love can transmute lives, how loyalty can mend wounds, and how hope can rejuvenate the spirit. It was the testament to how the scars of the past can evolve into emblems of fortitude, and how family, in its most profound essence, is the sanctuary where the heart finds its home. Ultimately, what remained was the certainty that love is the most potent force in existence. It is love that can mend shattered hearts, restore lost relationships, and forge something that endures eternally. And it is love that reminds us that, regardless of our origins or past actions, we can always find a second chance. We can always build a family, and we can always find a home. Thus, as the city of Chicago continued its routine, Ashley, Jack, and Ethan prepared to face the day, knowing that the love that bound them was stronger than any obstacle. They understood that the path forward would not be without its stumbles, but they also knew that together, they would never be alone. They were building something larger than themselves, something that mirrored the essence of love that transcends time and space. The story concluded with a smile, a hug, and the assurance that love would always prevail. With this conviction, Ashley, Jack, and Ethan turned toward the future, prepared to confront whatever lay ahead, confident in their unity, their strength, and their togetherness. They understood that love was more than just a word. It was a guiding force that protected and transformed them. They knew that love was all that mattered,